All right. Thank you all so much for coming out this afternoon. I know it's a little chillier than we might prefer here in Florida. So thank you for coming out as we celebrate the kickoff for our 30th anniversary year here at the Matheson. We have several anniversaries at the Matheson, depending on what you're looking at. It could be the date that we were incorporated. It could be, the date that one of the other organizations that we kind of merged with started. But the one that we are celebrating this year is that this building opened to the public as the Matheson History Museum on March 12th, 1994. So, will you please turn the volume down on our ambient music? um, so, the Matheson is something that is really dear to all of our hearts here. As we've been preparing for this year, I sat down and was looking at it, and I started as a volunteer here in 2015. So I've been with the Matheson for coming up on almost a decade, almost a third of the time that this museum has been open. I've been here. And I really feel in a lot of ways like we've grown up together. Um, we are very similar in age. So this is a place that's really special to me. Um, and I am so grateful for all of the work that everybody who's been involved with it over the past 30 years and even further back as it was being founded have really set us up. And we are ready to move on to a new phase and really do great things in the community. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we did last year. We're going to have our annual business meeting and elect some really fantastic new board members. And then we're also going to hear from one of our founders, Dr. Mark Barrow, and he will explain why we have called this the Ham and Eggs annual meeting. So starting off, I want to talk about just a few of the things that we have done in 2023, starting with our public programming. This is really the heartbeat of the museum. This is one of the things that we do very, very well. We are able to have such a wide range of topics and speakers, and we're very fortunate that we have such a great community here in Gainesville and Alachua County that we can draw on to have all of these speakers and people coming into the museum. Some of the highlights from 2023, we had programs about music history going along with this wonderful exhibit that surrounds us. We also had a presentation about the Beatles when they visited Florida. We had presentations about historic preservation, the 50th anniversary of the Hippodrome, as well as the efforts to save and preserve the Thelma Bolton Center. Melanie Barr is here, who is one of our presenters for that program. We've also done, a range of workshops and interactive programs. We had a poetry workshop in 2023. We also did a collage making workshop related to the language exhibit that we have on display right now. And then we also had quite a few programs on language and immigration. Just pulling out briefly a couple of the highlights. We started a new program series, Saturdays at Sweetwater, where we are doing more in Sweetwater Park behind the museum. Last year we had live music. We had a program about native gardening. We had a birthday party for Sarah Matheson. And we've got exciting new things coming up for the second Saturday. All of the months where it's not ungodly hot. So we're looking at probably, October through April. And then we also had a reformulation of our holiday program this year. And we really emphasized more of a family-friendly open house this year. And we had Santa Claus visit, we had vintage historic crafts based on things that the Matheson family would have had in the Matheson house. We had live music, and it was really a wonderful event. And I want to thank a couple of our board members, Mary Brandenburg and Robbie Davis, who really helped with the just amping up the decor here in this building. Robbie has a really wonderful collection that he shared with us for this event, and it really made it very special. And then these are some of the things that we have coming up this year. Next Friday on the 26th, we're hosting Dr. Ibram Kendi at Lincoln Middle School. He has a new book that is a middle grade adaptation of Zora Neale Hurston's Barrow. We also are going to be, as part of our second Saturday series, we're doing yoga in the park. We have a talk about the pagoda, which was a lesbian community, I believe, in St. Augustine. And then we're going to have a program about the ferries, bridges, and trestles over the Swanee River in the 1800s. So really a wide range of different topics. We want there to be something here for everybody. Another thing that we do is group tours and field trips. This year we had 359 visits to the Matheson House. We had homeschool groups come in. We have youth programs like the Mirror Image Leadership Academy, as well as the Interface Youth Shelter. We had a after-school program come and visit, and this is something that we are looking to do more of this year. One of our goals is we are setting up a more coherent written script for the Matheson House so that we can have volunteers trained so that we can have the Matheson House open regular hours at least one Saturday a month. We also go outside of our building and do a lot of community outreach and engagement. We connected with over 2,000 people this year, whether it was bringing a mini version of one of our exhibits to Santa Fe College, bringing some of our education collection to local elementary schools, talking to different community organizations like Rotary, retired UF faculty. We do a lot of things outside of the walls of the museum. And this is one of our ongoing fundraising priorities is we would really like to have a full-time curator of education and outreach so that we can do more of this. Because right now it's mostly me and I only have so many hours in my day and lots of other things that need to happen to run the museum. So that is one of the things that we are really wanting to make happen. We also have research appointments. This is one of the things that is not as well known about the museum, and that's our library and archives across the street. It is a really incredible resource for the community. We offer free research over there. Chloe often has people there every single Wednesday and Friday, whether it is a UF class, people coming in to do research on their home. Recently, we had an author who's writing a historical fiction book and was looking for an occupation that would be accurate for Melrose in the early 1900s. So there are just so many different things that go on with research over at the library. And then we have our exhibits. This year we had about 3,200 people visit as regular visitors for the exhibits. That's in addition to people who come for our programs. And we had 3 exhibits this year. 2 of them are still on display. We've got the Great Southern Music Hall as well as the language exhibit. So we are here in the Coffrin Gallery. That will be on display through February 10th. So there's still a little bit of time left to see that. We had a really wonderful community partner who helped us put together this exhibit. So we have here in this photograph, Valentina and Laura were the community partners who had already been working to gather stories of people in our community who speak languages other than English. And they were looking for something to do with all of their research besides just writing a paper. And so that is how we ended up with this really incredible exhibit that if you have not seen it yet, I really encourage you to take some time today. After we finish up here, we'll be having our refreshments, so you can take some time to look at the exhibits. And then we also have Return to Forever, Gainesville's Great Southern Music Hall. This exhibit will be up until May 4th. We're going to have a big closeout party for it, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Great Southern on April 26th. The first concert was performed April 26th, 1974. So we're going to have a big party for that, so stay tuned for more details. And then we also had a temporary exhibit. One of the things that we did in 2023 was we took in part of the collection from the Pride Community Center of North Central Florida because they moved to a new location. and did not have the space for all of the materials that they had been gathering for decades. So Chloe worked with Flo Turcotte with the UF Special Collections, and we were able to rehouse the entirety of the collection. So one of the things that we did for Pride Month this year was we put together a mini exhibit highlighting some of those materials. So Willett here curated that exhibit and did a really wonderful job. We got excellent feedback. We were able to take the traveling banners to the Pride Festival downtown, and it's been a really wonderful outreach tool. And then what's coming next? So first, we have our 30th anniversary exhibit. So this is a teaser of some of the design for that exhibit. Again, Willett has been working on the research for that and has done a phenomenal job finding just so much interesting information. And unfortunately, I've had to reel him in because we don't have that much wall space for all of the interesting things that he found. So that is something that will be opening in February. So we're really excited to share about that. And then the other big announcement that we have not publicly announced yet, so you all are some of the first people to hear this, is that the Smithsonian is coming to Gainesville. We are one of 5 venues in Florida that is getting the traveling exhibit, Voices and Votes, Democracy in America. So we have partnered with the Supervisor of Elections Office and the League of Women Voters to put together a local context exhibit. So the traveling portion is fully freestanding. It will be in the middle of this room. And then on the walls around it, we're going to have an Alachua County democracy exhibit. So the local exhibit is going to open in May, and then the traveling exhibit will be here for about 8 weeks from July to September. So that was the very, very speed round version of all of the things that we did last year. And that is because of you, our members. We could not continue the work that we do without your support. We do have grant funds that pay for some of what we do, but our members and donors are what keeps the lights on and makes sure that all of the things that go on in our spaces are able to continue. So I'm really pleased to share that we had a 38% increase in membership from 2022 to 2023, and we are right on track for another strong year in 2024. We also had a really great turnout this year for the Amazing Give. We were raising money to repair Sarah's streetlight. So you can see right there behind her, that is the last of Gainesville's original electric streetlights. Originally, the Gainesville Sun said, yes, absolutely, these will be ready by Thanksgiving of 1913, and then certainly by Christmas. But they did finally turn on in March of 1914, and that was while Christopher Matheson was the mayor. So when they were being replaced downtown, Sarah asked the city if she could keep one for sentiment's sake, and in her words, they came and dumped it on her lawn. And so that is something that we still have here at the museum, and 40 donors. We exceeded our goal of $5,000 by almost $1,000, and we were able to relight that streetlight as well as improve lighting throughout the rest of the park. So save the date. Amazing Give 2024 is April 25th. So be on the lookout for our project for this year. And I also want to highlight an individual donor. Well, not an individual, a family. The Dr. David Chalmers Local History Fund. This is something that Jean Chalmers and her family, Jean, if you could give us a little wave, we all know you're here. They established this fund through the Community Foundation of North Central Florida to honor Dr. David Chalmers and his love of local history. I was talking to Jean about this, and she said to me, David thought that history starts at the local level, and it was very important for local history to be preserved and made available. He's opposed to teaching history as leaders and kings. Folks in the community is where it starts and belongs. So the goal of this fund is to teach students at the University of Florida and Santa Fe College about working with local history and the ways that we are able to do that here at the Matheson. So we have been using that as a stipend for an intern. So we have had 2 interns so far. First, in the fall semester, we had Carissa, who is a University of Florida undergraduate history major. And then this semester, we have Merlin, who is actually here today, who is a Santa Fe College student. And they have both been able to work with Chloe and our collections, both to help the museum get things into our database and make it more publicly accessible, and also as an educational opportunity for them to learn about how to do research on local history, how to catalog things, and how to make them publicly accessible. So this has been a really wonderful program, and I just want to extend, again, our sincere gratitude to Jean and the Chalmers family. And if anybody else has an idea for a fund that they would like to start, I would love to talk to you about it. I also just want to briefly thank all of our sponsors. These are agencies that we receive grant funding from that helps to supplement what we get from our members and donors. So the AEC Trust, the Community Foundation of North Central Florida, Visit Gainesville, Alachua County, Florida Humanities, the City of Gainesville, and the Florida Division of Arts and Culture. So these are our grant funding agencies that help to make sure that everything that we're doing here is able to continue. And then we also have a few new ways to support the Matheson. This is information on our website. There is planned giving. If you are interested in talking more about that, I would love to chat with you later. And then we also have a new corporate sponsorship program. So we have 2 corporate sponsors right now, Meldon Law, which sponsored this wonderful exhibit around us. And then we also have Anytime Car Wash at Hunter's Crossing, which is Jeff Montgomery, who is here today. Thank you. So this is a new program that we just started last year, and we are looking forward to continuing to see it grow over the following years. And that is everything from me. So I'm going to turn it over now to our board treasurer for his annual report.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. Good afternoon, everybody. Dr. Barrow, thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to see you. I know I can be heard, but
much taller than me.
All right, right on. I just a couple things I'm going to say. Kaitlyn, you've done a great job. Thank you so much this year. I've been affiliated with Matheson almost as long as Kaitlyn. I started here as a part-time employee in 2016, I think, and I've been on the board and keep being on the board, and I'm a big fan of it. I'd like to say we did a lot of things last year. And you know, COVID is in the past in some ways, but one of the things that we really ought to be proud of ourselves, and mostly you who support us, is that we didn't shut down. And a lot of museums did, and we did not. And we fared well for that because we're coming back strong. We've had a lot of people visit our museum this year. We've had a lot of programs and activities that are interesting and diverse and current and old and middle. And so thank you to the staff and all those that have done that. I won't be long today. I'm just going to report out on how we're doing in the bank, but I would like to say my favorite thing from last year is the Chalmers Fund. Thank you so much for that. I'll tell you why. I am the guy that always champions outside of Gainesville, and there's folks from Archer here. Thank you, Lizzie. Folks from I'm the Melrose Hawthorne guy, and I just think it's really important that these folks that come to our universities or colleges, Santa Fe, one of the best in the nation, University of Florida is great. We have a medical school. Florida State is a clown college, so people come here to learn. And I think it's important, but as a native, it's so important. I didn't come to appreciate this place until I was 40 something years old. I didn't appreciate my home and all the things that is so great about this little land that we have here. So I think that's really important, Ms. Chalmers, and thank you so much for your support because it's going to do really good things. So I'll get started. I'll be very quick. Go ahead. Well, I think I have 2 slides. Lord, I hope it's just 2. I'll just say here, oh, I do a clicker. Oh, it's my fault. All right, right on. All right. So, our just going to report on how much money we have in the bank and what we spent our money on very broadly. And then, I'll be done. And I think the next person is Bob. So, our income, we brought in 340,203 this year. And a couple things, Kaitlyn stole one of my talking points, but we've had 147% increase in our rental income. And I will tell you that I think that goes back to we do rent space here for folks that don't know that. People have gotten married here or celebrate graduation or things outside in the gardens. But we've stayed open, and now that we can use this space again, I think that's money that's unrestricted for you nonprofit folks. 35% increase in grant funds. Thank you to Kaitlyn and her staff's leadership and grants. As a grant person for the federal government, it's hard to get a grant, so great that we get them. And a 28% increase in membership. Membership is also unrestricted funds. Thank you to those who support. I've gotten a couple checks today for annual membership, so thank you for that. That matters. And that's really kind of draws or kind of drives what we do here. Grants don't last forever, and so it's important that we have our local community people support us. Some of the expenditures that we had, we spent $342,000, a little over this year. But a couple things that's important to point out. The program support from grants goes to our mission-related expenses and to our personnel. So we're very lucky to have an executive director. So many museums locally do not have that kind of long-term support. And that, I think that's one of the things that's really fared us well with this organization is that we are able to keep the lights on and keep the stories being told. But I do want to point out, and the board members that are here tonight, I say it every month that I'm here. GRU is expensive. We can't do anything about it, but the utilities are expensive. And so those are things grant funds don't pay for a lot of times. And so it's important to point out that our mission critical infrastructure that's supported by members and donors, your money does go to keep the lights on and to keep the grounds clean and to keep the building here. That building, that Sarah's house is old. It's the third oldest in Gainesville. We have to keep it up. And so that costs money. So just want to point out that we spend every month, every dollar we get, and we try to spend it wisely. And I think with the last thing I'll just say before Bob gets up here is I just really want to highlight we really came in under budget this year with the exception of some unexpected expenses. And for you folks that follow the weather, Florida's a hurricane state, and it's really hard to get insurance in this state. And we were able to do it this year, but that was one of our biggest expenses, and also utilities and repair and maintenance. So please continue your support of the Matheson. Please make sure that you understand that we spend your money wisely and that every dollar counts to keep our stories being told. So thank you so much, and thank you for being here.
When I saw that slide, I knew I had to dress up. I had to look at least as good as that guy. And when I saw the hat, I knew I had to bring it. Because this is my Chris Matheson costume that I pretend to be him when we have our holiday open house. And it's really a lot of fun to do that. He was a lawyer too, although he was single when he was mayor. Didn't meet Sarah until much later, but that's another story. So much good has gone by you very quickly. I just want to emphasize a few stats first. 3,271 daily visitors, an increase of 17, almost 18%. 1,755 in-person and 277 virtual guests at our many programs, an increase of 30%. This is over the previous year. 227 research appointments, 359 individual tours of the Matheson House, 2,035 outreach interactions with the public, an increase of 141, almost 142%. Extensive repairs and restoration of the Matheson House and a new security system and improved outdoor lighting made possible by a generous $25,000 donation from Mickey Singer, for which we're grateful. $245,830 in grant funding, up from $214,954 in 2022. We exceeded year-end goals by several $1,000s, in part to a generous $10,000 donation from Ken and Linda McGurn, which made possible to end the year on budget and to pay the salary increase that the board had voted for Kaitlyn and the staff. 293 paid up members in 2023, a 38% increase over the previous year. That's fantastic. The staff did that. Give them a hand. And what a great plan for exhibits and programs in the coming year. Very ambitious one. With all of your help and with all these fantastic new board members we're about to get, I know we're going to do well. And I just want to add, the board makes general overall policy guidance, and they help raise funds, and they're ambassadors to the community, all of those things. But it's the staff, Kaitlyn and her staff, that execute all of this stuff. And we have one full-time executive director. We have 3 part-time staffers. We have 2 paid interns, thanks to Gene Chalmers. And that's it. And it's amazing to me how much that they're able to do. One other thing I want to mention, though, we've been involved for the last couple of years in trying to move forward, help the city move forward with the downtown strategic plan, which includes a Sweetwater Greenway loop, which would run right by here because the creek is right on this side over here, connect to the duck pond, with a crosswalk that's safe. Believe it or not, that T intersection out front is a legal crosswalk. It's just not safe because it's not marked. Well, Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock, the city commission, county commission are going to hear an update on the downtown strategic plan. And they, in that original plan, they described this spot right here as the downtown jewel. That's 2 years ago, but we're still at it. We're still going to, advocate for that. And we hope all of you will, because whether or not we have a bike path running around the city, we do need that crosswalk even today, to be safe. So that's part of our future with all the programs going on. I'm going to step aside now and let us elect a new board. But I do also want to echo the thoughts for our corporate sponsors, especially for you, Jeffrey. We've got a little project, as you know, we'll talk to you about on Tuesday. Because one of the things we want to do in the future is amplify our historic businesses in a way, those that are 25, 30 years old or older, and how they contributed to Gainesville. It could eventually contribute to an exhibit or a presentation, but certainly to make people realize how much history we have in Gainesville just in our business community. So with that, I'm going to step down and let the next person, which I think is Robbie Davis, oversee the election.
Thanks. We had currently a number. Been very social, particularly in American Idol. In any case, that would bring us to a thing on number 4, which is state of the allowances. So with that, check out the release and follow this.
Well, I think the appropriate thing to do is to move for a approval by acclamation. Okay, a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? If not, all in favor, say aye. None opposed? None opposed. Of course not. Thank you. And then lastly, we have to vote in the new, the officer slate as well. And I'm one of them. By the way, I can serve 3 years as president. I've served 2, so this is my last year. And we've got some good board members, though, who would help us next year. So do I have a motion concerning the officers? Jeffrey has moved by acclamation. Is there a second? All in favor say aye. All opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
All right, so now we get to the fun part, which is the awards. So I'm going to start off with our Volunteer of the Year, which I don't think she was able to be here today. But as we are getting into it, these are our past Volunteers of the Year. But we have an embarrassment of wealth when it comes to volunteers here at the Matheson. So choosing just one person is very difficult each year. So I wanted to highlight, some of our volunteers throughout the year. We have people working with our collections. We have people working with the actual facilities. Here we can see 2 of our board members painting the front of the building and scrubbing down the front of the Matheson house. We also have people come who help us with events. And I just want to give a special honorable mention to the Hof-Mahoney family, who will drag themselves from Tallahassee and South Florida at the drop of a hat to help us staff events. But our Volunteer of the Year this year is Andrea Phillips. She has been working with our collections, and she has worked with the Georgia Siegel Foundation Collection, which was something that we recently acquired. Georgia Siegel, who is indeed who the Siegel building is named for, she left money in her will to create a hospital for African Americans here in Gainesville. There was a building that was built, but eventually it was determined that it wasn't needed because Alachua General Hospital had theoretically been desegregated. So we have documentation of that collection and that process that Andrea helped to catalog and process so that it's available to the public. And then she is currently working on our photography collection. So in this photograph, she is working with some of the photographs. These are of soldiers, I believe, from World War II, who are from the area that we have photographs of. So Andrea, unfortunately, again, is not here today, but she has been doing a fantastic job, and we are so fortunate to have her and all of our volunteers. So now I will turn it over to Bob for the other 2 awards.
This is the President's Award. Kind of have discretion over that. John Rim, who still serves as the Alachua County Public Schools lead for social studies, arguably one of the toughest jobs in the county under the current political climate, is our next honoree. John has served on the Matheson board since 2021, and in subsequent years has served admirably as first vice president. In that role, he led a months-long national search for a new executive director, culminating in the unanimous choice of Kaitlyn Hof-Mahoney as our executive director. I would say that choice turned out pretty well. John has also led our strategic planning effort, a continuous process that now will be taken forward by Professor Charlie Cobb, who is moving from second vice president to first vice president. Unfortunately, he's out of town giving a lecture today, couldn't be here. When hard labor and teamwork was required last year to clean up the attic of the Tyson tool barn, John was there with his strong arms and his trailer to haul away trash and old furniture. Although John needed to step away from the board last fall to spend more time with his family, I cannot say enough about his contributions to the Matheson. He was a strong right hand for me and one of my closest advisors. He is this year's recipient of the President's Award. John, please come up. We can actually present this one. And Annie wants a picture. A little closer. All right, John, thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's right on.
Lizzie Robinson Jenkins, founder of the Rosewood Foundation, has dedicated her life to ensuring that people never forget the true legacy of Rosewood. She has served on our board since 2019. As the niece of Rosewood survivor Maholda Gussie Brown Carrier, Lizzie established the organization to honor her aunt's story and develop a timeline of historical events, identify lost survivors, and locate descendants. In addition to her extensive contribution to the foundation, she's encompassed several roles during her lifetime as an educator, an activist, and a prominent advocate for social justice and equality. Mrs. Jenkins was also a professional educator in Alachua County schools for 33 years. Lizzie credits her mother and Aunt Maholda Gussie Brown Carrier for who she is and her life's journey. She embodies the sacred beauty and excellence of Rosewood, and undeniably has been and continues to be the voice of those silenced in Rosewood to preserve their legacy. Today, Lizzie has her own podcast, the Queen Lizzie Podcast. There one can discover the deep history of Rosewood and hear her thoughts about how to empower humanity by exploring the Rosewood legacy to develop a better future for us all. She has also written 2 books, Lizzie's Rosewood Race and Alachua County, Florida. Both are available on the Rosewood website. She was recently honored at the 108th Annual Association of the Study of African American Life and History, that's a mouthful, with the association's Luminary Award. Today, we honor retiring board member Lizzie Robinson Jenkins, or Lizzie PRB Jenkins, with the Sarah Matheson Award, which is named for our co-founder and benefactor and awarded for outstanding contributions to our shared history. Lizzie, please come back. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Hold on. I've got the courses. There we go.
I'll actually give you the thing, the rag that goes with it.
Thank you very
I think it protects it. That's it. So next, for the highlight speaker of our program, our co-founder, benefactor, without whom there would be no museum, Dr. Mark Barrow.
I love the Matheson. Always loved it. I loved it before it was the Matheson. I came here as a student in '53, got my BS degree 3 years later, went to medical school. Here was in the first class, actually the first student selected in the first class of 1960. Did all my training at Shands. I'm a Shands product. Did a residency, a fellowship. I worked on a PhD, was on the faculty. But in 1970, I made a decision to go into private practice, and that made all the difference. I needed something to relax at home. So the first thing I did was go to visit someone you may or may not know, Jess Davis. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He had started collecting stuff back in the 1950s, and he was a postmaster of the post office here. And he did vignettes of history, and he wrote a book, mimeographed it on his home, a book on the history of Gainesville. Later, he republished it, so it all went away, and as the history of Alachua County, it was the same book because it had a lot about Alachua County. When I went to see him, he was about my age, and I'm 88, so I'm getting up there. And he said, "Oh my, I'm so proud you came, Mark. Here, I'm passing you the wand for history." And that made all the difference. So I needed something to do at night, so thought, well, I'll collect history books on Florida. At the time, they were very cheap, $5, $10. Now they're $50, $100, $200 on early Florida history books. And I began to collect them. I had 5 kids, and as they would move out and go to college, I put up bookshelves and I put these books in their room. And the way to keep up with it, I put the date at the bottom so I could find out if I had them. And there were book people that sold books. There was one in Chulioto, Florida, down near Orlando. They had an incredible collection of books, and I'd give her my list, and she'd have it the next time I came, and so forth. But then I became very enamored with postcards. Postcards started in 1900 here in this country by an act of Congress in 1898. And so Jess had some early cards. The early cards were made with land cameras, these big wooden land cameras. They went all over the world, came to Gainesville too, and made these pictures shooting up and down the streets. And they put horses and carriages and all this there in them, people. And then they sent them to Germany, and they were lithographed on stones. They are beautiful works of art. I keep harping at the University of Florida, the Horn, and others. These are miniature works of art, and we have them all. I started in 1970, and I've collected every week faithfully. I'm obsessed. What can I say? Everybody teases me about it. I have what's called a collector's brain. I know there are about 10 of you out there that have that you have to collect things. When I was a little boy, I collected little match safes that they threw on the street. Later, I collected jugs from old moonshine stills and so forth. But then I got into postcards, and they were beautiful. Well, I faced a dilemma because I started seeing beautiful cards from Ocala and Lake City, and I said, well, I'll just do courthouses of the other counties. And then about a year or so later, I said, to hell with it. I'm going to collect Florida cards, but I'm going to emphasize Gainesville, U of F, and the communities in Alachua County. As a result, we now have 4,200 cards from Gainesville, Alachua County. An amazing, amazing thing. Probably 98% of the ones that exist. No other town can boast that and make that boast in the world to have all those. I still work on them every week. I come down here and still every week faithfully go through the eBay and look for cards, and very rarely see one anymore. Well, the early history goes like this. I had a lot of patients. I had about 2,500 patients. It's a large group. Took care of, I thought, seemed like half of Gainesville, amongst who were Roy Hunt, professor of law, preservation law, Blair Reeves, professor of historic preservation, and Sam Proctor, who was university historian. All wonderful people and very knowledgeable. And so the funny story is about Roy is every time they'd come in, we'd talk about history, and wouldn't it be nice to have a local museum? Yeah. Finally, one day, Roy says, you know what? Yeah, I'd like to come just one time, and we talk about my problems, not the history. I said, well, you're right. What can I say? But anyway, they were great. So we started meeting at my house along with Helen Ellerby, who was she worked as a volunteer, and she collected old books and everything in the world that you could possibly think of. And then Sarah Matheson and several other individuals. We started meeting at my house in the late 70s and 80s thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we had a local museum? But we had no money, we had no place. In the late 80s, this building became available. And so we decided to create an organization. And the first one was Friends of the Matheson, or Matheson House, because Sarah had her house and she wanted to be a house museum exhibit, and she offered to give it to the Alachua County Historic Society, which was a group of wonderful people that had meetings every month on history talks. I gave several of them on medical history and history of Gainesville and all that. And the Presbyterian, she was very active in the Presbyterian Church, a deacon actually. And the Presbyterian Church wanted her house. And Marinus Latour, an early board member I'll allude to in just a minute, said, Sarah, and he was very active also, and he actually recorded their sermons every Sunday and put it on the air. He was in the electrical department at the university. And Marinus told me this, and I'm sure it's true. He went and said, Sarah, do not sell or give this house to the Presbyterian Church because they will immediately sell it. It'll be torn down and it'll put a high rise on that property. So when she learned that we wanted to create a museum, she offered it first to the county, Alachua County Historic, and they said it's too big a project for us to take on. So they asked me and our early forming group, yes, sir, we'll take it in a heartbeat. So then we created the Historical Archives of Gainesville and Alachua County. That's the Ham and Egg Committee, we called it. And we would talk about what a wonderful thing if we could have this museum and so forth. Well, then this building became available. They wanted to sell it. The American Legionnaires. They used it as a drinking hole. On this other room on this other side was a long counter, and they would gather here. They also used it to rent out as a stage here, and they had all sorts of performances here over the many years. But they decided to sell it or market it, and we met with them, and I met with them and others, and we agreed on a price, but we didn't have any money. Was it 160 or 180? I don't remember. I think it was 160. $1,000, which I thought was a steal. It was 5,000 square feet. So I went to the city and didn't know if they'd help us at all, and they don't usually. These not-for-profits. But what's David Coffey's? What's Coffey's first name? David. All right, David Coffey, and also another guy. Let me look him up real quick, but I keep forgetting his name. So pardon me, David Flagg. They were both very progressive commissioners. And I said, any way you could help us buy this building? They said, well, as a matter of fact, we've got $80,000 left over that was going to the grant, to the park fund that we got to send back to Tallahassee. We can give that to you, but you got to put an easement on the Matheson house and the property, an easement that says it's part of this overall complex and the park. And that's why we're involved with the park, to get that 80,000. And we borrowed the rest and raised money and did all sorts of things trying to raise the money. And we all came down as a board to clean the place up. It was in terrible repair. So that's how this place got created. And then Roy Hunt was on the committee for historic preservation in Tallahassee. And so we applied for the biggest grant they had ever said, $350,000 to restore this building. And so Roy called in his chips. You know, he'd helped support other programs, and he basically got that through for us. Then we got the award, and then we got a letter, no funding this year. Oh, crap. You know, what made us sick. And then 2 weeks later wrote and said, well, we're going to fund it, but we got to take 10% off. Okay, that's fine, 320,000. That's not bad. And I'm sorry, I'm blocking on the architect. You don't remember him, John, do you? for this building. Jay Reeves was the architect. Jay Reeves, with two other individuals, created a little company. This was his first job, his first job as an architect, major job. And then they bailed and went off to some university somewhere in the Department of Architecture. And he said, I can handle it. I can handle it. And he did a marvelous job. And then the contractor, whom I don't remember his name, but we looked through several and talked to him, and he was very interested. And he did this for exactly what he said. He said 320. He ran into all sorts of problems, not the least of which that wall up there, where that wall is over there, was riddled with termites up above. So they had to replace that whole section. He never sent us one cost overrun. And he did 1,000 things, more than he was required to do. And this was the building that came out of that was this building. So then we named it the let's see how it goes. It's on all the signs coming into town. You'll see the Matheson that says it's downtown, but it was called the Matheson Historical Center then. Well, the Alachua County Historic Society people had been offered the Matheson building. They didn't take it, and so we took it on, and Sarah had a life estate, which means she could live there. And she didn't have a clue what was in her estate. She thought it was maybe $100,000. Well, Sarah actually, she had 6 or 7 nieces and nephews. The Presbyterian Church, which was very important to her nationally and locally. So she divided up her estate into like 10 entities. Our share was $150,000, which got us over the top to restore that house, to finish paying off the loan here and so forth. So that's how this all got started. Well, then we looked in the community, and everybody chose people. So we got the first board that started meeting actually before we opened the building in '93, started meeting here. And I want to emphasize them, and then I'll shut up because I said I could talk for hours, as you know, but I said I wouldn't go over 12 or 15 minutes. But we had an original board, myself, Joel Buchanan, who's deceased, Ken Davis, who's deceased. Ken was an attorney. He had been chairman of the plan board for 10 years. He knew everything about the code. And anytime we had any problems, Ken would go down with me to the code people and say, now, fellas, look on page 32 of the code. It says we can do this. The most notable thing he did is when Marianne Coffrin and David gave us money to put in the parking lot, we had to have a site plan and engineering and all of that. We followed all the rules very carefully, no favors. And the guy in the code enforcement said, well, you got to put a handicap bathroom in the Matheson house. I said, it'll ruin it. We don't have a place to put it. We've got a perfectly good bathroom there that Mrs. Matheson used all her life, handicapped. And he said, and you got to put a new ramp. That one's 1 inch too short. Oh, God. And then, by the way, you got to put a bathroom and a ramp at the Tyson Tool Barn. I said, what the hell? There's no room to put one there. We have to build one outside. So I called Ken, and he said, I'll be there at 4 o'clock. He came down. We looked at it and says, come, let's go with me. So we go over to the city, and he goes to the head guy and said, Charlie, what's this about Matheson having to put handicap facilities in there in the building in the Tyson? He said, yeah, it's a museum. I said, that's not a museum. That's a museum. That's a Matheson House exhibit. The Tyson Tool Barn is an exhibit. The museum is over here, and it's got 4 bathrooms in it. He said, well, I guess you know best. That project would have been blocked had it not been for Ken and many others for the Matheson, all for me privately also. He was an amazing guy. Helen Ellerby was a librarian, and she saved everything. And we got all of her stuff. And Roy Hunt, I mentioned the law professor, a wonderful fellow. John Paul Jones started doing the Florida Monthly, and he had 50 or 60 articles. Every issue came out, all sorts of stuff about the Matheson. He was a great writer, and he would write these stories. William King, y'all probably never heard of. He's a CPA. He volunteered and he did all of our books for years free. Wouldn't charge anything. He was my CPA and my doctor guy, doctor's management guy, and so forth. And Marinus Latour, who was an electrical engineering professor, got interested in history because his wife was very interested in history, and she collected old books, of which we got a bunch of them here. And he got interested in going to the meetings and fell in love with history. So he was very active. And Marinus is the one that when we were trying to negotiate this parking lot next to us that was owned by the lawyers next door, and I couldn't get anywhere with them at all. With Allison Folds, he's a great guy, nice guy. He says it's nothing personal, it's just business. We don't want to divide up the lot. Well, we had paved that lot that they owned, and we got parking over here, and he got parking over on the other side. And I made a very serious error not reviewing the contract completely. And at the very end of it, it said it needs to be renegotiated in 10 years. 10 years later, only 2 lawyers were left out of 6. And Allison sent a letter and said, well, we're in dire straits here. We're going to have to start charging you rent to use that parking lot. I said, Alice, we don't have any money. What are you talking about? He said, $1,000 a month. We don't have $1,000 a month. What happens if we don't pay it? He said, well, then I'll chain it up. He actually did 2 weeks later put a chain across there. So we made a road back here in the woods before the parking lot was put in, and we'd park back there for a year or two, and I'd go see him every 3 months and get on my knees literally and beg him and say, I'm sorry, this is nothing personal. And then who became the president of our board, Tom Hawkins. He was an MD, he retired. He's from the Thomas family, and he became president, but he decided he wanted to go back and do a residency in family medicine. He was a radiologist. I said, Tom, not a good idea. It's a lot harder than you think. But anyway, I was lamenting and crying about the parking lot situation, and he said, listen, Folds I was raised with, he's one of my best friends. I'll go work something out. I said, no, you won't, but I'm not going with you. I burnt my bridges. And so he goes over and they stay and I wait and I wait and they stay. They come out arm in arms laughing. Yep, we've worked it out. Damn, that's the most amazing thing I ever saw. And what he worked out was you could not divide the lot, but he put an easement, permanent long-term easement on our side and their side. Only problem was cost $75,000, which we didn't have. And Marinus, which I didn't know he was fairly well off at all, I said, how much is it? He said $75, and he got out his checkbook and wrote a check for $75,000. So we've had all of these wonderful things that happened over the years, especially the early years. But let me finish this, and I'll shut up. Murray Laurie is a great writer, and she was on our board. She's now at the village still. And Gene Marshall, Gene and Terry Marshall, he was an ophthalmologist. And Gene and Terry and I in 1987 decided we were going to leave North Florida Complex and put our offices over here in East Gainesville. And he bought the Doig House, and I bought the house a block down the street called the Kelly Lodge. Big 2-story, beautiful Victorian houses. And our colleagues said, you guys have gone middle-aged crazy. Nobody's going to come over to East Gainesville. And what are you going to do about coverage over there and all this, that, and the other? And I said, well, I got to do it. I live over there, and my wife, we bought this house. She's restoring it. My office was a Victorian doctor's office at 810 East University. Exquisite. I went to the banker, John Jennings of Sun Bank, and told him what I wanted to do. And he says, how much you need? I said, I don't know. He said, well, how about I put on here no limit? Did you know that, John? So there was I could get as much money as I wanted. Is that crazy? To build my office, and Mary pulled out no stops. It was exquisite. I wish I had pictures to show you. But anyway, that's how that developed. Well, the other one was Ben Picard. Ben was a history professor. very opinionated. Ben and I, people would talk to me after the board. Are y'all enemies? Do y'all hate each other? Because we would argue vociferously about anything. But in fact, I got concerned, and I went over to see him one night. I said, Ben, do you not like me and you hate me? He said, why are you crazy? I love you. The fact that we argue means nothing. Don't worry about it. So, but he wrote multiple books, and he had a peculiar habit. He'd have a book committee on historic buildings in the downtown or something like that, and he'd appoint people to do this and that, and then 2 weeks later, he'd have the manuscript. He did it all himself. So Ben was great. And then Sam Proctor, I don't know if some of you did know Sam, was unbelievable. He knew everything about the University of Florida. He was a super, super duper guy. He gave us a total collection of the Florida Historical Quarterly. There are only 2 or 3 that exist, and he had 2. Gave one to the university and one to us, except for the first 6 issues in 1920 to 26. So he was wonderful also. And Blair Reeves was preservation architect, internationally known. And these 3 mainly were my counselors. So and I was early president, running the thing, running with the ball and so forth, trying to get us going. And I'd come up with some cockamamie dumb idea and talk to them about it. I said, "Oh no, you can't do that. Do this." So they guided us through, and that original board, was here 7 years. And about the 3rd or 4th year, a couple of them said, I'm busy doing this stuff at the university. I need to get off the board. No, not yet. Not yet. We're not settled yet. So they stayed on for a total of 7 years before we started the way the things are now. I wanted to mention one other thing and I'll close. And that is that I resigned in 2017 for a thing I won't get into at all. It's not relevant. And I got involved again in 2021, and we were about to go belly up. We'd spent all our monies from our houses that we sold. We had only $60,000, and we were overspending by $3,000 or $4,000 a month. And so I said, well, we got to get involved. I sent out 11 letters to colleagues. I won't mention 2 names, mine and Cal King. Cal King was on the board years ago. He's a great guy. And Cal has a disease like ALS now over at Ocamok and deteriorating fast. But anyway, I sent out 11 letters, and I write very passionate letters, if I might say so, about we're about to go belly up. And I said, Cal King and I are each contributing $25,000. We need to build up our reserves again. And 10 responded with $25,000. That's an incredible thing. This community is incredible. And lastly, I will say, and then I promise to shut up, is extremely important now. We're at the crossroads. Everybody put something in their will or trust. It doesn't have to be much. 5,000. Everybody can afford 5,000. 10, 25, 30. I shouldn't tell you this and shouldn't tell my son this. I'm going to contribute 100,000, and I've got 5 kids. They don't particularly like it, but that's how much I love the Matheson, and I want to leave that as my legacy. It can be used for anything. Ken and Linda McGurn tease me incessantly. We have lunch every several months. Say, best thing that happened to the Mathesons is we died. And I say, well, what does that mean? He says, well, there's a big thing in there. And I say, well, how much? Well, I can't tell you that. So we play games, and I say, 100? He goes, 200? 500? So it's probably $1 million. I don't know what it is, but it could be more. And there are others that have told me, Roy Hunt and others, but if you could just make 5, 10, 25, or whatever, put it in your will or trust now and let Kaitlyn know that it's in there. It doesn't have to be paid if there's no money there when you pass. It's not fixed in concrete. You have to borrow the money to pay it. So Ken and Linda and and Roy Hunt kick this off, but I want to leave that message with you in your heart. If you love this institution, my goal in life, besides taking care of my 5 kids and family, and they're pretty well set, is to see the Matheson sustained and successful. And I think it's very close. We have never had a better board. We have never had better administration. We've never had a better executive director. We've never had a better archivist. And they're just an intense pleasure to work with. And I don't know a lot of you, one or two of my board members, but I thank you for being so involved. I've been amazed. I love the Matheson. I always will. I come down here every Wednesday and play with the postcards. And we have 4,200. I'll tell you that again. It's an amazing accomplishment. Thank you very much to be able to talk to you tonight. Thank you for your great job you're doing, Christopher.
You know, I can tell you that there's never been a better board than that first board, and they are memorialized on a plaque over there in the corner as you come in, as well as the past presidents. And the other plaque memorializes the major donors over the years. We're trying very hard to steward our donors and to let them know continuously how much we appreciate their contribution. Without which we wouldn't have something not mentioned in the treasurer's report is that we still have most of that money that was contributed a couple of years ago. It's in the bank at the foundation, so it's there. But to be sustainable for the indefinite future and to fund that curator or director of education and outreach, we need a lot more. And that's a long-term and ongoing process. It's always going to be there. So that's the only concluding comments I have. Thank you all for being here. You made it another successful event at the Matheson. And I used to say when I was a kid, if we had some ham, we could have some ham and eggs. If we had some eggs, Melanie? Oh yeah, Kaitlyn's ready for that.
All right, so thank you all so much for being here. We have some ham and eggs in the coffering gallery, so please enjoy the refreshments. And then we have our raffle, so everybody get your tickets out. We've got 2 prizes today. So Dr. B, I'll have you pull first. All right, well, we've got 2. So the prize for the wine and chocolate basket is 046. In 046.